I think the conference, or at any rate some of the discussion forums, perhaps need to do more to explore the notion of ownership of risk, and also how risk actually is related to returns. We all pay tribute to the idea that that risk comes with returns. So if you are going to look for higher returns, you need more risk. This hasn't really sort of been driven through to the idea that the risk itself, taking ownership of the risk itself, is a source of opportunity and a source of returns. I've been lucky enough professionally to edit quite a lot of Robert Merton's work on risk, and he's someone who knows a thing or two about it. And one of the most interesting papers of his that I worked on was one in which he almost redefined what a corporation was, in which he said, more or less, that instead of being a collection of resources and capabilities, you could think of a firm as being the source of those things, being the source of competitive advantage. You could think of competitive advantage actually instead of as a comparative advantage in the management of certain types of risks. This being so, he said, what you needed to do was to look for those risks that you were comparatively better at managing than anybody else, and that if you did that and you focused on those particular kinds of risks, you could grow your business a lot faster. You could take on a lot more risk because that was the risk that you were best suited to manage. As it is, he says, an awful lot of firms have a certain amount of risk, and about half that risk is stuff that they're not particularly good at managing. So the challenge becomes, therefore, to hive that off so you can take on more of the risk that you're good at, which is, in a sense, what his whole derivatives what the whole derivatives market is intended, if you like, in a perfect world to do. Of course, it doesn't always work like that. But I think the fundamental insight is something that people need to look at a little bit more closely. It's about what kind of risks should you as an individual own, and I haven't seen that being discussed more than in passing at this conference so far. So the question is, what kind of risk do you take on? Do you take on, as I said, the kind of risk that you're better at managing? Because if you do that, then you will progress further. If you take on a bunch of risk that you're not particularly good at managing, you will not progress particularly far. I think Gillian Tett's contribution about telling us the kind of contribution that anthropologists could do. I mean, I happen to agree with that approach. People doing that kind of observational work, whether it's Fred Taylor in the factory, whether it's Gillian Tett herself in Tajikistan, that kind of work is extraordinarily valuable because it provides evidence, and from evidence you get data, and from data you can start to think about proving or disproving hypotheses that you might have. So you start to understand. It's very, very important work. And I think that it's very easy for, as Gillian says, for people to become siloed. So risk can be, in the banking system, becomes all about the financial risks that, whether it's credit risks, though that doesn't often get enough attention. You get the wrong kind of culture of risk, and that culture may be unsuited to the kinds of risks that then trip you up. If you bring in people from different disciplinary perspectives, they can very often make you more aware of risks that you're not even aware of.